My name is Carol Muller. I'm from the University of Pennsylvania. We're here today with Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I'm going to be speaking to Sibongile Khumalo, who is also from South Africa, and a really wonderful jazz and actually opera singer treasure for South Africa in the contemporary moment. So, thank you so much for being with us today, Sibongile.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm interested actually in the name of your ensemble, that you're here with a whole group of musicians, and the ensemble is Uhadi. Why it interests me is I've been back to the National Arts Festival in Grahamstown every year for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've noticed in a lot of performance the presence of the musical bow, which is Uhadi as a reference to the traditional musical bow. And I wonder if you could speak to naming an ensemble 20 years into freedom as Uhadi. What does this say about South African jazz? What does it say about anything?
The name was chosen because it references the root of our music. It references what we believe or where we believe we come from as musicians. It is about recognizing, acknowledging, embracing our traditional roots, our traditional or indigenous footprint, and the importance of being comfortable with both the past and the present in order to shape how we see the future. And the future in this instance of South African jazz, say distinct from Latin American jazz or even American jazz or European jazz. And we are saying these elements of our root music, of our folk music, give us a distinct sound, they provide a very distinct feature in the music, and basically we are comfortable with that. We are okay in our skins with being South African and African musicians within the global space.
I'm interested too, though, in your group, the group of men who you are singing with,
yes,
which is a very diverse group of men. So to go with Uhadi, and it's not the root of the music of everybody in your group.
Sure.
And yet there's a freedom to associate in that kind of way. Maybe it is the language of jazz that enables that kind of thing, which has always been a composite of lots of different people, lots of different styles. I don't know if that speaks. I mean, I'm interested to know how you conceptualize Uhadi for this group of musicians that you are performing with.
Uhadi is a Xhosa word, and the parallel for that in the Zulu language is Omakweyana, right? I'm Zulu speaking, Hebi, McCoy, and Fair are Xhosa speaking. So there is that convergence of Nguni languages, right? Paul Henma is, in the South African context, a colored person. Justin is a white person. And so it just becomes interesting how every single person in the group embraces some aspect or element of their root, which is being a South African first and foremost. Whether you're white or colored or black or Indian or whatever, if you were born in South Africa, they, at least in this particular context, embrace being a South African who happen to be musicians in this particular context. And so if you think of the Afrikaans group, for instance, which Badenhorst is one family group of, they probably have the fiol, the violin, right? Which is very similar to, say, country music that you find in America, for an example. So the string itself, the string which you find in Uhadi refers to the ability, the tautness, which is brought about by the tension in a group such as this, but also the flexibility of the string, if you loosen it a bit and allow it to take its own shape, it creates a space for the group to improvise, to make music as a group. It allows for the group. The name itself suggests that the need for flexibility, which resonates at the same time of that small chord that you find in the instrument, and yet makes this incredibly loud noise. And so all of us, except perhaps Justin, all of us are band leaders in our separate spaces, and we have come together to collaborate, to create what you could dare say is something that might in fact be definitive of a particular jazz sound, which is not Xhosa or Zulu or Afrikaans or colored or Indian, but it is a sound that in time may actually become the sound that might be identified with South African jazz.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Because everybody interprets, has interpreted jazz in the way that they know how, from wherever they come from within the context of South African music overall. Somebody like Hugh Masekela is distinct in what he does, right? But there are other elements and other aspects of the music that comes out of a group, a collaboration such as Ohati.
I'm interested then in tying into the South African thing. South Africa has 11 official languages. How do you manage that kind of linguistic diversity as a singer in jazz? Well, let's start off with jazz. Do you code switch a lot? Do you try and reach your audience? Is this something a challenge you've embraced? Does it change the nature of the group if you're singing exclusively in Zulu, for example? How does language shape the jazz that you make? Let's put it that way.
In a sense, it does. Essentially, it has to, because what you find in Xhosa music, you might not find in Zulu music. You might not find in Sotho music, for an example. And so, picking up on an ihubo, a Zulu sound of ukuhuba, which is the chant that a Zulu singing musician would make, would be different, for instance, to a Xhosa sound, a Xhosa word. And over and above that, you'll probably find within the Xhosa space, with Xhosa music making domain, you find the women who do the split singing. You know, unfortunately, I can't do that, so I can't give you an example of it. And so invariably, the band adjusts to what they hear, because they are also familiar with some of these sounds that music makers back home do. But also, I guess, because most people, a lot of it we hear subliminally. A lot of this music is there. So you incorporate these elements into the music simply because you have a well to reference from, and it just sort of filters through. Yes, the music has been created, the harmonies are in place, the melodies are in place, the words are in place, but certain things, I guess like any learned art form or style, you know, you have a vocabulary that you draw from, and so it sort of manifests itself and forces its way through. And in the jazz space, because improvisation is such an essential element of it, being able to refer to the different languages from back home is a big boon. It helps. It helps a lot. Yeah.
So it becomes a kind of musical palette for you in a way.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.